Welcome to UVU CS3060 Lecture 6.6, where I discuss tools for one of the tools for synchronization called the Mutex. Now, we've talked about different solutions for the critical section problem, and in the demonstrations I've shown you how to do these solutions. But in each one of the solutions, I simply surrounded my critical section with a couple of function calls and allowed the implementation of those locking and unlocking mechanisms to be contained within those function calls and not have to worry about rewriting them every time. Now, those solutions can be considered mutual exclusion locks or mutex locks. Now, in most cases, operating system designers build tools to solve these problems using, and mutex lock is one of the simplest. In order to use a mutex, you generally have a function to acquire a lock. And usually when it comes to acquiring the lock, that's whenever a process can be put on hold while it's waiting for the lock to not be used by another process. When the process is done using the lock, it would perform a release. Now, there will be a Boolean variable indicating if the lock is available or not, and you can check that in some iterations of this function, implementations of this function. Now, as with our instructions, the acquire and release functions must be atomic to work properly. And they do this usually, as we saw, with hardware atomic instructions. This solution requires busy waiting, and we usually call a mutex lock a spin lock. As we saw up here, what happens is we have a while loop that just goes on forever as long as the lock is not available. As soon as the lock becomes available, the lock is acquired, so it's made unavailable again, and this entire function has to operate atomically. Now, clearly this can be used through something like a test and set, or through a set and check. And then we have our release, where available is set to true. And then around our critical section, we call the acquire function to start with, and then the release function when we're done. You will create programs that will use these particular mutexes. This ends Lecture 6.6, where we discuss the mutex.